is Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of the syndicated talk show, People of Distinction. A talk that gives you an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, alcoleenterprises.com for more info. Email me through benji@alcoleenterprises.com if you'd like to get involved with what we have going. And as always, please continue to like and follow our broadcasts. People of Distinction is internationally syndicated solely due to the love and support that you all continue to give. We're available across all major distributors, and as long as you keep following, we're going to continue to put out the content. Now sit back and strap in, because on the line with us today, we have the impressive Walter Reed, and we're going to be discussing his incredible book, Indonesia, A Journal of One Marine's Odyssey. It's Amazon, it's Barnes & Noble, man, it's a lot of other places. But to gather more information on Walter, more information on this book, on the process, with photos, and hopefully with much more information on what is to come, you got to check out his Facebook page. And it's going to be under the book's title, Indonesia, A Journal of One Marine's Odyssey. Head on over to facebook.com and gather all the information today. And I quickly want to take an opportunity and point out the fact that Walter was brought to us by City of Books. So for writers out there listening in who have gone through their process, listen, man, if you need some assistance moving that book you just worked tirelessly to create, head on over to cityofbooks.com and gather all of the ways that their fantastic team is well equipped to help you do just that. And listen, it is a true pleasure to have Walter here on the line. You know what's interesting, man, is like when we were doing research and we were preparing for today's discussion, I came across the idea, like the thought that, listen, some stories take time to ferment, right? Sometimes it takes a little longer to be ready to be exposed. And that's exactly where we find ourselves here today with Walter. You see, because, man, listen, he waited 40 years to tell his. A layered tale of duty, of curiosity, and a love that became a cultural compass. This is a raw, evocative journal of his quest to experience Indonesia, right? But the real Indonesia, the one that is taken in at first-hand experience. It's a quest that would ultimately redefine him far more than his service rifle ever could. This is going to be an enlightening conversation, and it's something that you're going to need to add to your shelf to experience it all. Once we start talking today, you're going to understand why I say that. But be ready. Walter, first and foremost, welcome to the network, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing very well, and thank you for having me.
Listen, it's a pleasure. I think there's something about military stories that I think is just, listen, there's a lot of engagement, right? There's a lot of interest because so many people are on the outside looking in. So to be able to get a firsthand glimpse, I think is something important. But what you were able to learn and how this experience changed you, I think is going to be beneficial, man. I think it's going to be packed with wisdom for a lot of others. So we're looking forward to the discussion. Walter, first and foremost, man, let's start off by learning a little bit more about yourself. Now, I know the book is a memoir, but it covers a very specific time in your life. Talk to us a little bit more about yourself, aside from what we will uncover in the book.
I am originally from Chicago, moved out to Fremont, California when I was 13, and I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19, and I was in the Corps for 6 years. I served 2.5 of those years overseas at the American embassies in Jakarta, Indonesia, and Seoul, Korea as a Marine security guard. After I left the Marine Corps, I went to Marine Computer Learning Center, and I became a computer operator and then spent the next 34 years working in IT. And all that time I wanted to write. I was so busy raising a family and trying to keep my head above water.
I get it.
That there was just no time for that. So when I retired, I decided that it was time. I had time now, and it was something I've been carrying for all that while, and I wanted to get it out.
Walter, you said something interesting, man, because you're going through your process, and now you're leading up to the inspiration. And I know that this was something, at least as I understand, is something that was always there. It was a desire that was there, but, like we said, responsibilities of life, they take precedent. Well, I'm curious to know, was there a particular catalyst? Was there a particular event that ultimately became the precipice for this? Or was it just, hey, now I have time, let's get it done?
The thing that actually pushed me into doing it was that a friend of mine who was a school teacher in a high school in Tracy, California, he had an idea for a book, and he read some of my work, some of my poems, and he said, I want you to write my book if you'll do it for me. So we worked together, and then we got to the summer, and he disappeared for 2 months. So I'm there with nothing to do. So I said, well, I'm going to just jump into my book, and I just started it.
There you have it.
I kept at it. I kept writing both books simultaneously.
I love it. All right, well, listen, man, without further ado, I got a lot of other questions, but let's learn more about the book now. Indonesia, A Journal of One Marine's Odyssey. Tell us more about it.
Well, it's a book that spans the whole time I was in Indonesia as a Marine security guard. It was in Jakarta, of course, the capital city. And it's about the things that I did there with part of my detachment as well as on my own. There's a lot of information there about being embassy life, Marine Corps and detachment life. And it was also a romance, but it was primarily about cultural immersion. And how that changed my life. Well, and I achieved that because of my girlfriend. I had an Indonesian girlfriend, and she was my guide.
Walter, I understand why this was a book that you wanted to put out to the world, the interest that you had with it. And again, I'm very glad that you did. But I'm curious to know, because what's interesting here is the 40-year span between all of this happening and then its final creation. When you were writing, as what often happens with authors that have written memoirs or things that are deeply personal to them, going back and reflecting after now having years been removed from this particular incident or incidents, there is now a different state of mind. There's a different perception in which you're now taking. I'm curious to know, was there anything with that when you were writing it? How did that 40-year gap between experience and writing change the story?
I'm sure it must have had an influence on it. I'm hoping it didn't change it too much, because I was trying to be as pure and exact as I could, as my memory would allow.
Yeah.
That was what was most important to me, was to get it out exactly as it happened and get it right so people would understand it fully.
Love it.
And I worked really hard to do that. And I think I did for the most part. I'm sure there's things that, I did make a few observations from my present time in the book. And so it wasn't all completely back there at that time. There was some time, I made a comment. This is how I'm thinking about it now. Then,
people, I'm telling you, you got to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Remember to check out his Facebook page to gather more information. But this is a book you want to add to your shelf. Remember, it's entitled Indonesia, A Journal of One Marine's Odyssey by Walter Reed. Pick it up today. Walter, my follow-up now, as a way of paying it forward, almost, but not paying it forward solely to readers, but to a very specific reader, right? To fellow young Marines that are out there that happen to pick up copies of the book and embark upon this journey. Is there a particular message that you want to relay to them or are hoping that they pick up from your book?
Yeah, I hope they learn something about how to be a Marine and what it takes to be a Marine from somebody who is an old school Marine. Every generation of Marine looks at the previous generation as old school, the old school guys. And so that's how they would look at me. And I'm just telling them, yeah, this is where it was back then. And it's different than it was now when you're in, but there's still the basic things are the same. Yeah. And there's opportunities there, but you've got to go out and you've got to figure out what you want and go grab them. And it can be done. You don't have to be stuck in one place and do just one job the entire time you're in the service.
Yeah.
There's options, and you can learn. Many of these things there are a lot of things to learn, especially as a Marine security guard. There was just so much learning living in different countries, both Indonesia and Korea, that it's always right there in your face because you're dealing with these people all day long. They're coming into the embassy, you're talking to them, and you have to decide whether you can let them in or not. And there's just a lot going on all the time. And then you're always out in town. I decided, instead of just being part of the group and going out in town and drinking and going to the clubs and whatever, I decided that wasn't really the life I wanted there in Indonesia. I wanted more. And so that's when I decided it would be great if I could get an Indonesian girlfriend, but I had no idea how I was going to do that. And then it all of a sudden just happened. And so I ran with it. And And the whole story unfolded from there.
I love it. It all worked
Everything
out.
that happened, and how I learned about the culture and how I was really wondering about it because it was so crazy and I didn't understand it. And it took a long time, and it took a major event for me to overcome all that and to really learn about the lesson of culture and what it's like to be in another culture.
Okay.
So that was the purpose of my book.
Well, let's utilize
Get
this
that
next.
across to Marines and anybody.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, let's utilize this next moment here, Walter, as a way of learning some of that. Now, listen, people, I mentioned it before. You know where you got to go. You got to purchase your copies. If you want to gather it all, we're not going to give it away, okay? But let's go into maybe one experience, right? One thing that either was a learning lesson for you or maybe even just a fun or exciting journey that you can articulate now to our listening audience, just to whet the appetite. Let us know what to expect.
One of the things that, well, there are a number of things that shocked me. I mean, really shocking. But one of the things, and I say this because it's more amusing than the other one that I could use because the other one is very sad. So I would rather keep it upbeat. But so this one is my girlfriend Neneng and I were out shopping in a local shopping district along a busy road, a busy street there. And right just about a half a block down was a railroad crossing. And a train came and the arms came down. And then so it was a 2-lane road, one lane in each direction. So the cars started backing up in the one direction, going away from us. And then all of a sudden, cars started coming around and going into the other lane that was for the opposite direction. And they started filling that lane up until it was completely full. I was wondering if the same thing was happening on the other side, just as the train went by. And sure enough, there they were. There were 2 walls of cars facing each other. They were just across the train tracks. And they all hit their horns and then hit their gas. And they all went at each other. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Right. And they came down the street and they started jumping the curb. People were running for their lives. Neneng and I had to duck into a store just to get off the sidewalk. And somehow nobody got hurt. I don't know how that happened. And there was no major accidents, just a lot of sideswiping. And I thought afterwards, you know what? That trains come by there all the time. This probably happens constantly.
It's an everyday occurrence.
Yeah. To me, it was like a huge thing. But to these people around me, it was probably every day. They just were used to it.
It's like, this is the 4:30 traffic rush.
Yeah. So that was very scary. But a part of it was also that they had to get into kind of a queue. And Indonesians do not do queues. So they always try to get where they want to be all at once, right. Whether it's a cashier in a department store, or whether it's a movie box office or whatever, they all rush it. And they push and shove till somebody gets to the front. All the others just crowd around until they're done. And then they push and shove till the next one gets to the front. But there's never a line. It's another weird thing that always got me. I never understood that.
Walter, as we close out, man, I think that there's an interesting path that I want to go down now. And listen, your experience, I think, can offer a lot of insight. And first and foremost, let me just make sure that I put this out there. People, I'm not making this political, and I'm not trying to necessarily have a discussion with regards to that. But I do feel you can't necessarily deny it, right? I mean, there's connections here. And my question is going to allude towards the inherent tension in being a symbol of American power while being overseas. And the reason why I mentioned the political comment is because, listen, I don't think it's definitely not something that is limited to this administration. You can go back through the history, and there's always been, or I guess, I don't want to say always, that's a blanket statement, but there's been a lot of times where America is not necessarily welcomed in these other countries from a military standpoint for one reason or another. And I'm not saying we are guiltless in that, okay? That's for another discussion. But the point being, as a Marine stationed in another country, you are this symbol of America, of American power. And that can be viewed at times as very negatively. And again, we look at how our military is currently being used in other countries with this administration, and my goodness, things are definitely, we're treading that line. Well, we'll just say that. Talk to us, Walter, about your experience being a military personnel in another country. How were you perceived? Barriers that you had to face, the heaviness of wearing that uniform at times. Shed a little light on that experience, please.
Well, yeah, it's a big subject. And there was a lot that happened over there that fit into that. I was fortunate in being a Marine security guard that I had diplomatic immunity. Now, that was something fairly new at the time because before that, Marines did not have diplomatic immunity. And that was a cause of concern and problems, which is why the State Department finally figured out how to make us junior diplomats. And so we would be able to have a diplomatic passport and have diplomatic immunity. So that helped a lot as far as getting us out of trouble. But as far as going in town, we never wore our uniforms except to and from the embassy and at the embassy, but except for one time. And actually that one time, well, let me give you a couple examples. Once I was walking with my girlfriend Neneng down Main Street. We were about to turn down her street. And there were across the street, there was a group of men, about 4 men, digging a ditch. And they were very young men, and one of them suddenly stopped digging and started yelling and really loud. I looked, and turned out he was yelling at me, and he was calling me names, and he was calling me dirty American and get out of here and go home, and he was flipping me off. He was really upset, and I hadn't done anything. I was just walking by on the other side of the street, and then he started challenging me. He was trying to egg me on to fight him. And he's got a shovel and 3 friends with shovels. So it wasn't like I was about to walk across the street and engage with this guy. So I yelled back a few things and let him know that, I wasn't chicken or anything. But I knew as soon as I turned away that he was going to start calling me a chicken. That I just said, forget it. It's not worth it. I don't want Neneng to get in the middle of something where she could get hurt. Yeah. And I just turned around and we just started walking up the street. And they called me chicken. They called me all kinds of names while we were walking away. Stupid American, chicken, coward, all that stuff. But on the other hand, there was the day I actually was able to wear my uniform away from the embassy. It was the Marine Corps birthday ball day, and I had to go pick up Neneng at her house, her house was in an area quite a ways from the embassy, and I was allowed to take the Marine van to pick her up. And I was in my full dress blues, and I go there to her little poor neighborhood, and I get out of the van and knock on her door, fully dressed, with the cover and the gloves on and everything, and knock on her door. She answers the door, and then we turn around and walk out, and there's 50 people surrounding us. It happens in Indonesia. If there's anything going on, there's an instant crowd. And they were all cheering and clapping and everything as I took her and got her into the van. And they were all really thrilled. It was just kind of like that scene from An Officer and a Gentleman at the end where he goes and picks up Deborah Winger and walks out to everybody applauding. It was kind of like that. It was kind of like that moment. And it was really a cool moment. And so you never knew in Indonesia. But some people there were very good. Most of them actually were very friendly, very nice people. But there were those among them that did not like us to be there. Not for anything that we did necessarily. They just didn't like Americans being in their country. Yeah. So we had to deal with that off and on the whole time I was there. And then, of course, at the embassy, we never knew who was going to be coming in. And, we had to be very careful when we screened them. And sometimes they didn't like that. I had a few people get upset, but mostly they understood. I mean, I had one time because I had my watch ripped off my wrist in a big crowd, and I chased the person, and I thought I had the right person, and it turned out it wasn't, and I had grabbed him and thrown him to the ground. Oh, no. It's because I was trying to get my watch back, and it turned out he wasn't the right guy. And my girlfriend was following me, and she's explaining everything in Indonesian, why I did this and everything. And the guy gets up, and he's on my side. He's like, oh, that's okay that you did that. We got to try to find that guy. So they're amazingly understanding once they understand the situation. I had no real problems with most of the time with the people there. I enjoyed them.
Walter, I think that's a great point that you bring up, man. And listen, that's why I wanted to get to the heart of it, because I think it's very easy to assume. It's easy for Americans to get offended when other countries look at us like stupid Americans. And it's also very easy to assume from another country's perspective to just look at every American and have these thoughts. And that's why I think your book is a wonderful example. Like it's a journey in and of itself, but it really is a powerful reminder that sometimes to truly see another country, you first have to step outside of your own role, right? You have to try to shift that perception. And listen, man, like it's not going to do it all for you, okay? But it is going to allow you to really begin that journey, right? To allow you to see the moments that quietly dismantle our preconceptions and rebuild our understanding. And people, listen, the book is nuanced, man. There's a lot more to be gained. But if you take nothing else, that I think is the power of the book. Just my opinion. But I think that is something that we really, really need right now because, listen, man, and that's, you can just take that and copy and paste it really into anything. It doesn't have to be between Americans and other countries. It could also be between Americans and Americans. There's a lot of division right now. There are a lot of people that are just on completely opposite spectrums and are unwilling to have a conversation and to meet in the middle and allow this book to help ease that transition, help ease that path amongst a plethora of other things, one of which being, of course, very entertained. So I'm going to say it for you again. Remember, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, check out his Facebook site, but pick up copies of Indonesia, A Journal of One Marine's Odyssey today. Walter, this has been a true pleasure, man, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.